There are seasons when God begins to pull you into a deeper version of yourself, and at first it doesn't feel holy, it feels heavy. You start noticing things about your emotions that you never paid attention to before. You notice how quickly your mood can shift, how fast irritation rises, how easily you withdraw or shut down, how effortlessly you carry questions you don't want to ask out loud. You feel the tension between who you used to be and who God is calling you to become. And even though you can't explain it to people around you, you can feel the shift happening on the inside. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough forming in disguise. Growth often introduces itself through disruption. The heart gets uncomfortable, the mind grows restless, old coping mechanisms stop working, old relationships feel out of rhythm. Your spirit starts craving clarity and healing, and suddenly the normal you lived in for years feels too tight. It feels like you're living in a room that used to fit you but somehow became too small. You haven't done anything wrong. Your soul is simply expanding. God lets this discomfort rise because He's guiding you toward parts of yourself you've ignored. He's bringing to the surface every unspoken emotion, every unhealed disappointment, every quiet wound you learned to hide. Not because He wants to overwhelm you, but because He loves you too much to let you keep carrying what was slowly breaking you. Sometimes He will let certain emotions become louder, so you finally pay attention to them. That fear you keep pretending you don't feel, that sadness you smile through, that anxiety you rationalize away, that emptiness you keep blaming on exhaustion. Those feelings are not your enemy, they are signals. Signals that something inside you needs understanding, compassion, release, or restoration. God is teaching you to stop running from your inner world, to stop labeling your emotions as weakness, to stop believing that strength is silence. You learn to be the strong one, not because you wanted to, but because at some point in your story you didn't have another option. Strength became a survival instinct. Silence became a safety mechanism, and pretending you were okay became easier than admitting you were hurting. But the version of you God is building now requires honest internal work. He's calling you to stop treating your emotions like burdens and start treating them like information. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot grow past what you refuse to acknowledge. The real transformation begins when you allow yourself to sit with the emotions you used to outrun. And the truth is, many of your emotional habits didn't originate from who you are. They came from what you lived through. Life taught you how to survive before it taught you how to feel. Someone's absence taught you to detach. Someone's inconsistency taught you to worry. Someone's harshness taught you to shrink. Someone's rejection taught you to overthink. Someone's silence taught you to fear speaking up. Your current emotional responses are often old wounds wearing new clothes. But healing begins when awareness steps in, when you start noticing, this isn't who I am. This is who I became when I didn't feel safe. You're not dramatic. You're healing. You're not distant. You're protecting yourself. You're not cold. You're cautious. You're not confused. You're unfolding. God is showing you the roots so you can stop blaming the leaves. As He brings clarity to your emotional patterns, He also brings tenderness. Because emotional healing requires gentleness, you cannot bully yourself into becoming whole. You cannot shame yourself into maturity. You cannot criticize yourself into peace. God is teaching you to speak softly to your own soul. To say things like, I'm allowed to feel this. I'm allowed to take my time. I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to be human. I'm allowed to grow at my own pace. Emotional transformation is not fast, it's layered. God removes one weight at a time. He untangles one belief at a time. He heals one memory at a time. He reveals one truth at a time. What feels slow is actually sacred. What feels frustrating is actually formation. Your healing is not late. Your progress is not small. Your growth is not invisible. Your strength is not accidental. You are becoming someone who can recognize emotions without drowning in them, someone who can feel deeply without losing direction, someone who can handle tension without shutting down, someone who can release instead of suppressing, someone who can express instead of escaping. This inner work prepares you for everything God has ahead. Because emotional healing isn't just about feeling better, it's about living better. It affects how you love, how you speak, how you make decisions, how you set boundaries, how you show up, how you trust, and how you dream. Emotional maturity becomes the foundation for spiritual power. God cannot elevate someone who keeps collapsing internally, so He strengthens your emotional core so your spiritual calling has something sturdy to stand on. And while this process feels uncomfortable, it's evidence that you are stepping into a new dimension of identity, a dimension where you no longer define yourself by your wounds, a dimension where you no longer shrink for the sake of peace, a dimension where you no longer silence your needs to satisfy others, a dimension where you show up whole, present, and grounded. This emotional evolution will also change the way you love others. You'll be able to love without losing yourself. You'll be able to care without carrying everything. You'll be able to support without suffocating. You'll be able to stay connected without abandoning your own needs. Healing teaches you balance, boundaries, wisdom, awareness, authenticity. And as God works in you, you will begin to feel a steady quietness rising inside you. A quietness that says, I don't have to fear my emotions. I don't have to suppress anything anymore. I don't have to pretend to be okay. I don't have to be perfect to be loved. I am safe within myself now. This is emotional resurrection. This is soul elevation. This is the beginning of a new inner world. God is not only teaching you to heal, He is teaching you to inhabit your emotions with confidence instead of fear. And this version of you will walk into the next season with more clarity, more grounding, and more spiritual authority than you've ever known. Something deep within you is awakening, and the peace you're beginning to feel is only the first hint of the transformation God is unfolding next. There comes a time in your transformation when God begins guiding you into a deeper awareness of what drains you and what strengthens you. You start realizing that your emotional capacity is not infinite. You cannot pour endlessly, you cannot carry endlessly, you cannot stretch endlessly without noticing the impact on your spirit, and so God begins teaching you how to honor your limits, not as weakness, but as wisdom. For years, you may have prided yourself on being available for everyone, the dependable one, the strong one, the one who shows up even when exhausted, the one who listens even when your own heart is aching, the one who remains calm even when your internal world feels like a storm. But God is showing you that unprotected strength leads to emotional depletion. You weren't created to exist in a state of constant giving. You weren't designed to suppress your needs in the name of maintaining peace. You weren't called to carry burdens that were never assigned to you. You're learning now that emotional burnout doesn't arrive in one moment. It arrives slowly through small daily compromises. Every yes you said when your spirit whispered no. Every moment you silenced your needs to avoid disappointing someone. Every time you showed up without having the capacity to be present. God is teaching you how to recognize your emotional thresholds. Not to limit your love, but to protect your heart. Not to create distance, but to create health. Not to push people away, but to stop abandoning yourself. This growth begins with honesty. The honesty to say, I'm tired. The honesty to say, I don't have the capacity for this right now. The honesty to say, I need a moment to breathe. The honesty to say, I matter too. You do not have to earn permission to rest. Rest is not selfish. It is stewardship of your emotional well-being. God does not reward the person who destroys themselves for the comfort of others. He rewards the one who learns to nurture the soul He entrusted to them. And as you learn emotional stewardship, God begins to shift your understanding of what peace truly is. Peace is not found in keeping everyone happy. Peace is not found in putting your emotions on mute. Peace is not found in avoiding difficult conversations. Peace is found in alignment with God, with your purpose, with the truth of what your spirit needs. You will notice that peace becomes harder to maintain when you accommodate what contradicts your growth. You feel the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. You feel the internal conflict of trying to carry emotional weights that no longer match your season. You feel the exhaustion of trying to be everything for everyone while neglecting the person God is shaping you to be. But as emotional wisdom begins rising in you, so does discernment. You start recognizing what costs you peace. You start realizing which conversations leave you empty, which relationships drain your spirit, which patterns exhaust your mind, which responsibilities do not match your capacity. You start being honest with yourself about what you can carry and what you cannot. This does not make you unreliable. It makes you human. It makes you balanced. It makes you spiritually mature. And as you adjust your emotional boundaries, you begin to see how much of your anxiety came from carrying expectations that were never yours. You realize that the pressure you felt was often self-inflicted, a result of believing you had to prove your worth through service, sacrifice, or silence. But now God is teaching you a different rhythm. He's guiding you into emotional sustainability. He wants you to serve from overflow, not emptiness, to love from strength, not depletion, to give from clarity, not obligation, to show up from wholeness, not guilt. This is how emotional maturity begins transforming the way you love others. You start loving without losing yourself. You start caring without sacrificing your stability. You start helping without overextending. You start supporting without absorbing. Your presence becomes healthier. Your voice becomes clearer. Your boundaries become firmer. Your soul becomes lighter. As this shift unfolds, God also begins healing your relationship with disappointing people. Because emotional boundaries often upset those who benefited from your lack of them. You learn that your growth will confuse those who expected you to remain convenient. Your changes will challenge those who were comfortable with your old patterns. But emotional maturity requires you to hold your boundary even when others do not understand it. You cannot let someone else's discomfort pull you back into old versions of yourself. You are not responsible for managing the emotions of those who refuse to manage their own. You are responsible for your peace. You are responsible for your stability. You are responsible for your growth. And God is proud of you for learning this. For the first time, you are choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. You are realizing that honoring your emotional limits is one of the greatest ways you honor God, because He cannot pour new oil into a vessel that is cracked, emptied, and neglected. You are becoming emotionally anchored, present, aware, and aligned. The version of you emerging in this season refuses to apologize for protecting your peace, refuses to shrink for the sake of keeping someone comfortable, refuses to sacrifice your mental clarity to maintain expectations built on unhealthy foundations, refuses to be drained when God is calling you to be restored. This is emotional awakening. This is spiritual alignment. This is the beginning of balance. You are learning to protect the version of you that God is raising. And this emotional strengthening will become the foundation for every purpose He reveals next. You're stepping into a new emotional rhythm, and what God aligns next will flow from the peace you're finally learning to guard. There comes a powerful shift in your growth when God begins revealing the emotional patterns that shaped you for years. Patterns you didn't choose intentionally, patterns life taught you, pain carved into you, or your environment normalized for you. But now that God is elevating you into a higher version of yourself, He is showing you the behaviors you must outgrow to carry the future He planned. One of the first patterns God highlights is the tendency to internalize everything. Internalizing is an emotional habit developed when you were surrounded by people who didn't know how to handle your feelings. Instead of expressing yourself, you learned to swallow emotions whole. Instead of speaking up, you learned to stay quiet. Instead of sharing pain, you learned to bury it. Internalizing became your survival tool, But God is disrupting that survival instinct because internalized emotions don't disappear, they ferment. They turn into anxiety, resentment, overthinking, self-blame, or emotional distance. God never intended for your heart to be a storage unit for unspoken pain. He intended it to be a place of freedom, so He's teaching you to release instead of suppress, to communicate instead of shutting down, to express instead of imploding. You are learning that your silence has cost you more than your honesty ever will. Another emotional pattern God confronts is the habit of emotional forecasting, assuming the worst before it even happens. When you have lived through disappointment, you start bracing for it. When people have hurt you, you start expecting repeated hurt. When life has surprised you with difficulty, your mind begins preparing for more difficulty. This creates emotional tension long before anything goes wrong. But God is teaching you to stop rehearsing disaster, to stop creating fear-based outcomes in your mind, to stop letting your anxiety write narratives that your spirit was never meant to live in. Your imagination must be reclaimed, your thoughts must be renewed, your expectations must be aligned with faith instead of fear. He is training you to recognize when your mind is lying, to say, "This fear is not fact, this anxiety is not prophecy, this thought is not God's thought about me." Your emotions will always exaggerate what your spirit has not yet learned to trust. Another pattern God addresses is emotional detachment. Detachment often forms when your heart has been wounded repeatedly. You learn to stop expecting from people, you learn to stop hoping for connection, you protect yourself by staying half present, half invested, half attached, but emotional detachment creates distance not only with people, it creates distance within your own soul. God is teaching you to come back home to yourself, to open again, to feel again, to trust again, not recklessly but intentionally. You are not meant to be numb, you are meant to be whole. He is showing you that vulnerability is not a weakness but a doorway to deeper connection, with Him, with yourself, and with others. Another emotional habit God confronts is self-neglect, prioritizing everyone else while ignoring your own needs. Self-neglect masquerades as strength. It makes you feel noble, responsible, dependable, but it is silent self-destruction. When you consistently put yourself last, you eventually lose pieces of your identity in the service of others. God is calling you back to yourself. He is reminding you that your needs matter, your voice matters, your heart matters. You cannot keep pouring from an empty place and expect to remain whole. You cannot keep giving to everyone and offering nothing to yourself. He is teaching you to prioritize your well-being unapologetically. Your healing is a responsibility, your peace is a calling, your rest is a strategy. Then God addresses the habit of emotional overclarification, explaining yourself excessively to avoid being misunderstood. You've grown accustomed to justifying your decisions, over-defending your boundaries, over-explaining your intentions, but this constant explanation is rooted in fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being judged. God is teaching you that clarity does not come from over-explaining, it comes from alignment. The right people will understand your heart without requiring a speech. The wrong people will misunderstand even your silence. He is guiding you toward emotional confidence. Speak once, stand firm, let God defend the rest. Another pattern He disrupts is emotional avoidance, the tendency to distract yourself from discomfort. You stay busy when your heart aches. You laugh when you're hurting. You overwork when you're overwhelmed. Avoidance gives short-term relief but long-term emptiness. God is leading you into emotional courage, the bravery to sit with your pain, process your feelings, and heal your wounds. You are not running anymore, you're facing yourself with honesty and grace. As He reshapes these patterns, you begin noticing the transformation. You're calmer, more intentional, more self-aware, less reactive, more grounded. You are becoming emotionally mature, capable of holding your feelings without being controlled by them, capable of navigating relationships with wisdom, capable of moving through life with clarity, capable of giving love without losing yourself. This is the rebirth of your emotional identity. This is the unveiling of your healed self. This is the shedding of who you were and the emergence of who you're meant to be. And every layer God removes prepares you for deeper peace, deeper love, deeper purpose. You're shedding emotional habits that once confined you, and what rises next will reveal the strength God has been building within you all along. There comes a season when God begins teaching you the sacred strength of emotional discipline, not suppressing your emotions, but guiding them, not ignoring your feelings, but interpreting them, not silencing your reactions, but choosing healthier ones. Emotional discipline is not about perfection. It is about awareness, intention, and alignment with God's voice instead of your impulses. God begins by showing you how much power you give away when you react instantly. Quick reactions come from old wounds, unresolved fear, trauma memories, and stress patterns. They are emotional reflexes, not emotional wisdom. Reflexes happen automatically, wisdom happens intentionally. So God disrupts your automatic reactions by training you to pause. The pause is powerful. The pause is spiritual. The pause is maturity. In the pause, you breathe. In the pause, you evaluate. In the pause, you reclaim control. That pause becomes your emotional reboot, the space where God steps in before your emotions take over. You begin to realize how many past conflicts could have been avoided if you paused, how many misunderstandings could have been softened, how many regrets could have been prevented. The pause becomes your emotional armor. Then God teaches you the importance of not personalizing everything. When your heart has been hurt before, everything can feel like a threat. Someone's silence feels like rejection. Someone's tone feels like an attack. Someone's distance feels like abandonment. But not everything is about you. Not every situation requires self-blame. Not every shift in someone's mood needs to become your emotional burden. You are learning to separate your worth from people's behavior. Their actions are reflections of their own inner world, not a reflection of your value. Their coldness does not define your identity. Their inconsistency does not diminish your significance. Their emotional instability is not yours to interpret or absorb. God is teaching you emotional neutrality, the ability to observe without internalizing, the ability to see clearly without assuming the worst, the ability to remain grounded even when someone else is struggling. Another layer of emotional discipline is learning that protecting your peace is more important than proving your point. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to defend every decision. Some battles drain your spirit and distract you from what God has assigned you to do. Your peace is a shield. Your peace is a filter. Your peace is a spiritual strategy. When something threatens your peace, that alone is enough reason to step back. Not everything deserves access to your emotions. Not everyone deserves a response. Not every situation deserves engagement. Then God begins training you to regulate your emotional expectations. Emotional instability often comes from over-expecting, expecting people to think like you, expecting conversations to go perfectly, expecting closure from people who never offered clarity, expecting love from those who never learned how to give it. Unrealistic expectations create repeated disappointment. God is teaching you to adjust your expectations, not lower them, but align them with reality. Some people cannot meet you on a deeper emotional level. Some individuals will never match your loyalty. Some environments will never nurture your growth. And some relationships will only survive if you stop expecting them to become something they are not. Then there is the discipline of emotional responsibility, the quiet awareness that your reactions are your own. Even when someone provokes you, even when circumstances frustrate you, even when stress surrounds you, emotional responsibility means choosing the version of yourself you want to show up as, instead of letting your emotions choose for you. God is calling you to a higher level of emotional leadership. Lead your reactions, lead your words, lead your energy, lead your boundaries. Your emotions are tools, not tyrants. And as your emotional discipline grows, you start seeing results that surprise even you. You respond differently, you interpret differently, you feel differently, you recover faster, you communicate clearer, you protect your peace with confidence, you choose alignment over impulse. This shift changes your entire atmosphere. People sense the stability in you. They feel the calm in your presence. They notice the difference in your responses. They respect the boundaries in your energy. Your emotional world becomes ordered, structured, steady. This does not mean you never feel overwhelmed. It means the overwhelm no longer controls you. It does not mean you never face conflict. It means conflict no longer dismantles you. It does not mean you never get hurt. It means hurt no longer becomes your identity. Emotional discipline is spiritual maturity. It is the mastery of your inner world. It is the strength of being unshaken by what once destabilized you. You are becoming someone who can navigate pressure with grace, someone who can handle emotions with wisdom, someone who can move through life with inner stability, someone who can walk into new seasons without bringing old chaos. This is God refining the emotional foundation that your entire destiny will stand on. Your spirit is becoming steady in ways you've never known, and the clarity rising within you will transform how you navigate every season ahead. There comes a moment when God begins teaching you the art of emotional protection, the sacred discipline of safeguarding your inner world, not building walls, but building boundaries, not isolating, but discerning, not shutting people out, but filtering what gets access to your peace. In this season, God is revealing the environments that drain you, the conversations that unsettle you, the relationships that confuse you, the responsibilities that exhaust you. He does not reveal these things to create fear. He reveals them to give you clarity. Your emotional world has been too accessible, too open, too unprotected, and now that God is shaping a stronger version of you, He is teaching you how to guard your peace like a spiritual treasure. One of the first lessons in emotional protection is recognizing what disturbs your spirit. Not everything that bothers you is dramatic, but it is meaningful. That discomfort is a sign from God that something is misaligned. A tone that unsettles you, a demand that overwhelms you, a pattern that drains you. These aren't random annoyances. They are divine indicators that your peace is being compromised. Your spirit speaks through discomfort. Your intuition speaks through unease. Your discernment speaks through tension. You're learning to listen to what your emotions whisper before they escalate into something louder. Then God teaches you the power of emotional boundaries. Emotional boundaries are not distance, they are structure. Emotional boundaries are not rejection, they are protection. Emotional boundaries are not punishment, they are wisdom. Boundaries say, this is what I can handle, this is what I cannot carry, this is where I stop. This is where you step in. God is breaking the belief that boundaries are unkind. Boundaries are an act of love. Love for God, love for others, and love for yourself. Without boundaries, your emotions become scattered, your peace becomes fragile, and your life becomes unbalanced. Then God addresses the emotional habit of people pleasing. People pleasing is emotional bondage disguised as kindness. You learn to adjust yourself so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You learn to silence yourself so others wouldn't feel offended. You learned to overextend so others wouldn't feel disappointed. But people pleasing is expensive. It costs you your peace, your clarity, your identity, your emotional health. God is teaching you that you cannot save people by abandoning yourself. You cannot rescue others while drowning. You cannot be everything to everyone. You cannot sacrifice your emotional stability to maintain relationships that cannot stand on truth. Your calling does not require shrinking. Your destiny does not require silence. Your peace does not require permission. As God strengthens your emotional protection, something within you shifts. You stop apologizing for your capacity. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop feeling guilty for honoring your limits. You stop defining your worth by how much you give. You start realizing that love is not measured by sacrifice alone. It's measured by alignment, by honesty, by balance. Then God begins teaching you the wisdom of emotional detachment. Not detachment from people, but detachment from outcomes. Emotional detachment means releasing your need to control how situations unfold, how people respond, or how moments evolve. This frees you from overthinking, obsessing, anticipating pain, over-explaining, and emotional exhaustion. You are learning to show up as your best self and let God handle the rest. And as emotional protection strengthens, your spiritual sensitivity increases. You begin noticing when your peace shifts. You begin detecting when conversations carry hidden tension. You begin sensing when someone's intentions are not aligned with your well-being. Your emotions become wise, not reactive. You start choosing where you invest your energy. You choose conversations that elevate you. You choose relationships that nourish you. You choose spaces that honor your growth. This doesn't make you hard to love. It makes you harder to drain. And the beautiful thing about emotional protection is that it creates space for inner peace, space for joy, space for clarity, space for divine downloads, space for healing, space for spiritual alignment. Your life becomes calmer, your mind becomes clearer, your heart becomes lighter. You begin to feel grounded in yourself, a stability you never knew you needed. This is not just emotional development. This is spiritual refinement. This is the emergence of someone wiser, calmer, and more aligned with God. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming intentional. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming wise. You are not becoming selective. You are becoming strategic. And this emotional protection will prepare you for the opportunities God places before you next. You are becoming a guardian of your own peace, and the strength rising in you will shape everything God opens for you next. There comes a point in your emotional journey where God begins confronting the reflexes that used to control you, reflexes formed in survival seasons, reflexes shaped by disappointment, reflexes crafted in environments where you weren't emotionally safe. These reflexes were once necessary, but now they are limiting. They protected you before, but they are restricting you now. God begins with the reflex of emotional defensiveness. Defensive reactions come from wounds not yet healed. When someone says something small and your heart interprets it as an attack, that is an unhealed part of you asking for attention. When someone withdraws and you assume rejection, that is old pain resurfacing. Defensiveness is not aggression, it is fear wearing armor, but God is teaching you that not everything is a threat. Not everyone is out to hurt you. Not every silence is abandonment. Not every disagreement is disrespect. Your spirit is learning to respond from truth rather than fear. You're learning to say, let me understand before I react. You're learning to say, maybe this isn't about me. You're learning to say, my worth is not defined by this moment. Then God addresses the reflex of emotional shutdown. Shutting down is a protection mechanism, one you mastered when expressing emotions felt unsafe. But emotional shutdown prevents connection. It stops healing. It blocks intimacy. It keeps you locked in cycles of self-defense instead of self-expression. God is teaching you to let people in again, slowly, safely, intentionally. He is showing you that vulnerability is not a threat but an invitation to deeper connection. You are learning to express instead of retreat, to engage instead of hide, to trust instead of disappear inside yourself. Then comes the reflex of overanalyzing. Overanalyzing is emotional exhaustion disguised as preparation. You replay conversations. You rewrite scenarios. You imagine every possible outcome. You try to protect yourself by predicting the future, but overanalyzing steals your peace and drains your energy. God is teaching you to rest your mind, to trust what you cannot see, to release what is beyond your control, to let Him be God in spaces where your mind is trying to keep you safe. You begin learning phrases like, "I don't need to figure this out right now. I trust God more than my fear. This moment does not deserve all my mental energy." Then God confronts the reflex of self-sufficiency, the instinct to carry everything alone, the instinct to handle life without asking for help. You learned independence because life made you believe you had no other option. But self-sufficiency becomes emotional isolation when taken too far. God is teaching you that strength isn't isolation. Strength is partnership. Strength is asking for help when you're overwhelmed. Strength is letting people support you. Strength is accepting comfort instead of pretending you're fine. Your healing is teaching you connection, not dependency, but healthy connection. Another reflex God addresses is emotional avoidance. You postpone confronting hard truths. You distract yourself from uncomfortable emotions. You pretend you're okay so you don't have to process pain. Avoidance gives temporary relief but long-term instability. God is calling you to face your emotions with courage, to acknowledge old wounds, to unpack unspoken sadness, to release buried anger, to forgive what keeps resurfacing. Healing requires confrontation, not harsh confrontation, but honest confrontation with your own heart. And as God dismantles these reflexes, you begin feeling emotional clarity rise within you. You start responding differently. You start thinking differently. You start interpreting moments with wisdom instead of fear. Emotional reflexes once controlled you, but emotional awareness now guides you. You begin recognizing that emotional reflexes were rooted in old pain, but emotional responses are rooted in healing. This shift prepares you for emotional maturity. You no longer lash out, you no longer shut down, you no longer run, you no longer crumble. You breathe, you discern, you reflect, you respond. This is emotional strength. This is spiritual growth. This is identity rebuilding. You are becoming someone who can thrive emotionally without being controlled by old reflexes. You are developing new mental patterns, new spiritual instincts, and new emotional habits. This transformation is sacred. This growth is divine. This healing is intentional. God is creating a version of you who can walk into destiny without being destabilized by emotions. You are rising with emotional clarity and power, and what God shapes inside you now will redefine how you step into every future assignment. There comes a moment in your growth journey when God begins transitioning you from emotional survival into emotional mastery. You are no longer simply trying to manage your feelings. You are beginning to lead them. You are discovering that emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to navigate your emotions with clarity, wisdom, and spiritual grounding. This is the stage where God begins revealing just how much authority He has been cultivating within you. You start seeing it in small moments. Situations that would have overwhelmed you before now feel manageable. Emotions that once felt uncontrollable now feel navigable. Circumstances that used to destabilize you now meet a steadier, stronger version of you. This is evidence that you have grown. One of the first signs of emotional mastery is the ability to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. You can feel anger without letting it turn into destruction. You can feel sadness without letting it drag you into despair. You can feel fear without letting it silence your courage. You can feel disappointment without letting it become identity. You are becoming emotionally intelligent, not reactive, but reflective. God is teaching you to ask deeper questions. What is this emotion trying to tell me? What memory is this feeling connected to? Is this situation actually threatening me, or am I reacting from old wounds? What truth does God want me to hold on to right now? You are learning to interpret your emotions spiritually instead of impulsively. Another sign of emotional mastery is resilience, the ability to feel deeply and still move forward. Once a setback would stop you. A misunderstanding would unravel you, a conflict would consume your thoughts, but now God is teaching you to recover faster, to bounce back sooner, to redirect your focus quicker. This resilience is spiritual armor. It protects your calling, it stabilizes your heart, it strengthens your mind. Then God teaches you emotional surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means letting go of the need to control what is beyond your reach. Emotional surrender frees you from overthinking outcomes, micromanaging relationships, and internalizing every shift around you. Surrender sounds like, I trust God even when I don't understand. I release control because I am led, not lost. I choose peace over panic. I choose faith over fear. This surrender builds emotional safety inside your soul. Another vital aspect of emotional mastery is learning to live with spiritual perspective. You stop reacting from the limited viewpoint of the moment. You start responding with awareness of the bigger picture. You recognize that not everything happening around you is about you. Some conflicts are tests, some delays are protection, some endings are direction. Some tension is preparation. Your emotions become grounded in wisdom instead of assumptions. Then God begins shaping your emotional authority, the ability to carry influence without collapsing under the weight of responsibility. He is preparing you to handle conversations with grace, decisions with clarity, and leadership with humility. This emotional authority becomes visible in the way you carry yourself. Your voice becomes calmer. Your presence becomes stronger. Your boundaries become clearer. Your reactions become wiser. Your thoughts become quieter. People begin to sense the strength inside you, a strength that comes from inner alignment, not external validation. God also teaches you emotional consistency. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means stability. It means showing up as the same grounded, clear-minded version of yourself, no matter the circumstance. Consistency requires discipline. It requires emotional awareness. It requires spiritual grounding. You are learning to regulate your emotions instead of letting your emotions regulate you. Then comes emotional confidence, the quiet certainty that you can handle whatever unfolds. Not because life is easy, but because you are anchored in God's presence. You trust His guidance, you trust your growth, you trust the process, you trust the tools He placed within you. This emotional confidence removes fear. You're no longer intimidated by hard conversations. You're no longer shaken by temporary chaos. You're no longer afraid of making mistakes. You're no longer controlled by insecurity. You walk differently. You speak differently. You move differently. This emotional transformation prepares you for the next dimension of your life. Destiny requires emotional steadiness. Purpose requires emotional grounding. Influence requires emotional maturity. Leadership requires emotional wisdom. God has been shaping you for a life that demands the version of you that is emerging right now. You are becoming someone who can handle promise and pressure, someone who can stand in rooms you once felt unworthy to enter, someone who can speak with authority rooted in humility, someone who can love deeply without losing yourself, someone who can hold responsibility without being overwhelmed. You are becoming emotionally whole, emotionally awake, emotionally strong, emotionally balanced, emotionally wise. This is not just healing, this is elevation. This is not just growth, this is transformation. This is not just change, this is rebirth. God has reshaped your emotional world from the inside out, and now you carry the strength required for every new chapter that awaits you.